I'm Ryan Groves, and this is my wife Tiffany.
Hi, we're here today to discuss what came first, the chicken or the egg. That was a joke.
It's funny.
Our friend has joined us in the treehouse.
And here comes the army of other ones.
Oh no.
Oh, last time we talked about pyramids. This time let's talk about like theories of actually who made the pyramid, and if it's so ancient and predates even the dynasties of Egyptian pharaohs from 1000 BC. It even predates all that. Who made it, and where did they come up with the mathematical knowledge, the astrological knowledge, the engineering knowledge, and the ability to actually construct something so perfect and so massive? And we listened to a lecture by Manly P. Hall earlier, who traced it back to Atlantis. And he said the first thing you have to do is just take a look at all of the pyramids that are found all over the whole world. Like we've said before in another video, that there's hundreds, if not thousands, in China alone. And there's ziggurats. There's ziggurats in Southeast Asia. You got pyramids in South and Central America. Pyramids and megalithic structures in North America.
And similar writing.
It's similar writing, yeah. And it's as if we went from backward hunter-gatherers with super primitive technologies to an explosion all around the world of things like written language, science, all the arts and sciences. It doesn't make any sense. Plus, the pyramids predate history. I mean, they predate even the dynasties of Egypt, like from 1,000 to 10,000 BC.
Also, I think a good point is, how would you spend so much of your resources on conquest and border skirmishes, and also manage to cultivate your population to be artisans and skilled laborers?
Yeah, sure, especially
because you need the soldiers, plus you need your laborers. So the population would have to be awful large.
And it would have to not be spending every waking moment hunting and gathering. That there must be some sort of civilization, some sort of agricultural development already in order for artisans, like you said, to even be created.
And we find older cities, much older than the Egyptian dynasty, that have underground aqueducts and sewage and indoor plumbing. So we do have evidence of very ancient civilizations, and I do wonder why that's not more broadly addressed when you look at anthropology or books or architecture or civilization or the history of civilization, or etc.
Manly P. Hall suggests, and this is kind of what his thing is that Atlantis wasn't a city, that it was a full-blown global kingdom, empire. And the Atlanteans are responsible, according to some Egyptian texts. I think when Solon came from Greece to study with the Egyptian priests, that one of the many things that they taught him was that the Atlanteans had built the Great Pyramid, or the pyramids of Giza, and several others all over the whole world. Now, it'll knock the phone over again. There's a chicken trying to come up by the camera. So anyway, he says that the evidences of these another chicken. The evidence for this is in the fact that you have language, and you the sudden emergence from the hunter-gathering way of human life into these, developed, civilized creations that spontaneously seem to pop up all over the world in ancient history, almost simultaneously. And his thesis is that the Atlanteans had taken over major swaths of land on all the continents, and yet there were still pockets of primitive men still all over the planet as well. Kind of a modern day correlation to that would be that there's places like deep in Southeast Asia and parts of Africa, or there are some cultures still alive and well today that have no knowledge or exposure to Western civilization. And so the technological disparity between the West and these still persistent primitive culture would be very similar to what he was saying about the Atlanteans. And he suggested that the Atlantean wise men, or wizards, because they claimed to have the fullest understanding of all knowledge that is knowable to a man from the beginning, and that they sent out cultural or civilization missionaries and went to these pockets of primitive people and taught them astrology, astronomy, arithmetic, mathematics, engineering, government. And evidence for this is found in the origin stories of like the Navajo and the Hopi and the Aztecs and the Incas and in China, that their origin stories all begin with a flood, and they also begin with some demigod or some godlike being coming to them and teaching them civilization. And in several of these myths, or
a lot like we would send out missionaries today.
Right, but these are civilization missionaries.
Mm-hmm.
And several accounts from all over the world.
Yeah, because they wouldn't know that they needed to buy their goods unless the Atlanteans told them so. Because they probably survived pretty well without some of that.
Mm-hmm. So in several of these instances, these demigods that bestowed civilization on these primitive people said, "You keep these arts and keep this knowledge and keep your sciences, and you keep them and protect them and pass them on from generation to generation. And one day I'm going to come back and I'll claim this empire that you're making for me." But evidently something happened and they never came back. But this is why Montezuma bowed to Cortez and his men when he showed up on the scene, because he thought that, because the Aztec culture had preserved this
he thought
history.
He was that old prophet.
And he thought it was the Atlantean demigod that was finally returning. And of course we know the truth and what really happened after that. Now, okay, so just a point I was going to make. Do you have something to say right now while I collect my thoughts?
Well, not necessarily, just that the human body is probably the most complex machine, and I think maybe at one time they put a little bit more emphasis on trying to get to know what was behind the machine, where now we're so materialist that we want to reduce it to certain sets of chemicals. And I bet back then that probably wasn't the case. Notice that even if they were an advanced civilization, they didn't create plastic.
So are you suggesting then that that there's a spiritual element that is just as important, if not more so, than just the physical manifestation of our bodies?
Oh yeah, for
And that
sure. Because
we've
if
cut
there's
that part off.
yeah, because if there's no ethic behind the scientific endeavor, if it's amoral, then it can become a monster to mankind rather than being a helper, or rather than, because I think it was Manly P. Hall that just said something about how we've managed to create hundreds of thousands of pieces of technology. I don't know if he said he wouldn't have said computers because.
Well, he did say computers, actually.
Oh, okay. As I say, I know they weren't that big back then, but there's still starving people. There's still inequality, no equity across the board. So, yeah, I don't think advancement is necessarily how technologically advanced you perceive yourself to be. I think it has to be kind of a whole, you have to look at it as the whole big picture of spirituality and your use of science.
Now, there's a big emphasis. He quoted Francis Bacon a lot, too, who Manly P. Hall shared ideology with. He agreed with Francis Bacon. And the whole theme is that these Atlanteans understood the necessity of having an ethical, moral foundation for any knowledge that one would utilize for any purpose. And that without that ethical, moral
underpinning,
guidance,
philosophy,
sure, that technology can only destroy itself or destroy the person that uses it. Now, if we take this back to we try to connect this to the idea in Genesis 6 that angels came down and, bred with human women, and that they made a pact on Mount Hermon that they would all go down together when it came time for God to punish them for their disobedience. That they came down and divided up the world into regions, each one taking a region and becoming its king or its god or whatever, and they set to work right away on creating civilization for them to enjoy here. And it's no far stretch of the imagination to assume that they didn't want to make a scary. We associate fallen angels with demons. I think it's fair to assume that they didn't want to come down here and create a hell on Earth. I bet they wanted to make a heaven on Earth, just as beautiful and wonderful as what they'd experienced in heaven, only of their own creation down here. And part of and so they were.
She just wants to be in the picture. Oh, but she's being shy, so she's backwards.
What? She's just showing her chicken ass. Now, so these fallen angels also understood the way the world was supposed to work, the way God intended it to be. And it seems that they understood that the importance, even though they were immoral in their decision, they still wanted to function positively here and create a pleasurable experience for themselves for their duration here, and that they understood that you needed morality and ethics in order to capitalize on the potential of creation and living that was available, on Earth. And so when you, like Hermes, the Pillars of Hermes, like when there's a gentleman named Solon who came from Greece and studied, went to Egypt and studied with the Egyptian priests and learned from them. And one of his accounts is that they took him under the pyramid into this cave, and they went deep.
Woo! He flew.
He went deep underground, and they took him to this lake, underground lake, and dark waters, and there's a boat on the shoreline, and they took him in the boat to an island in the middle of this lake. It sounds a lot like Gollum's under the Mountain Dew. I'm not going to say precious like a Gollum. So. But anyway, on this island were these two pillars, and they're called the Pillars of Hermes. And the Egyptians said that this was the history of Atlantis, and it was the Egyptians' charge to maintain this knowledge, pass it down, and keep it safe and keep it secret, for the most part. And something remarkable about these pillars is that they were made of some unknown, indestructible material. And there's another pillar allegedly made out of the same material that was in India. And during one of the British colonial wars in India, that apparently this pillar had been hit with cannonballs, and rather than the pillar being marked or dented or destroyed in any way, that cannonballs would actually hit it and shatter. And the Egyptians told Ceylon that Atlantis, the capital city of Atlantis, which we now call Atlantis, actually had walls made out of that material, which I thought was a neat side note. But anyway, before Atlantis could return, the Atlanteans could return and see the fruits of their cultivation of these primitive people into civilizations, that a deluge happened, the Great Flood, and actually it destroyed most of Atlantis. And after the flood, there was one bastion left on an island in the ocean, one bastion left of that ancient Atlantean civilization. And it was that island that subsequently was erroneously referred to as the city of Atlantis. It was the capital city, evidently, but that's not just what Atlantis was. That was just the capital city. And sometime about 10,000 BC, whatever, that island finally crumbled, and that was the end of Atlantis. However, their secrets, some of them, and some of their technologies and their histories were, like I said, evidently preserved with the Egyptians at that time, which is pretty crazy. So what you got now?
I don't have anything else at all.
Okay.
I mean, I have plenty of stuff, but it has nothing to do with what you're talking about. So.
All right. Well, maybe on the next one, then you can come up with something, and if not, I'm gonna push this Atlantean narrative a little further. But I guess that's it for now. All right. Cool. That was fun.